Finally, Jean-Claude Van Damme speaks out about Steven Seagal. What he says is shocking, and even worse than anyone thought it would be. They had fans who begged for answers, made guesses, and even hoped for a famous on-screen reunion for years. Instead, they got something much more dangerous. There was a mysterious Instagram post at the start of it all. It looked like peace, but it was really just the calm before the storm. Now, after decades of stress, Van Damme has come forward and told the truth. What he says about Seagal, their feud, and the truth behind Hollywood's biggest martial arts myth will change everything you thought you knew. There were two names that nearly jumped off the shelves in video rental stores in the early 1990s. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. This was the start of the silent war. For their fans, they were the height of masculinity in martial arts and the epitome of what it meant to be a real action star. There was one that had championship medals and spinning kicks. The other person had cold steel-like eyes and sharp Aikido wrist locks. But fans back then didn't know that there was a real-life feud going on behind the high-stakes fights and slow-motion blasts, one that is much more personal and not at all planned. At first, there didn't seem to be a problem. No insults in public and no tabloid stories, but if you paid close attention to the interviews and the talk behind the scenes, you would hear something strange. Steven Seagal would often brush off other martial artists, especially Van Damme. When he was with the press or talking behind the scenes, he called Van Damme a dancer instead of a fighter. A jab at Van Damme's early dance training that was meant to make his fighting skills look bad without actually naming him. It was quiet, even sneaky, but people in the business did pick up on the tone. No matter what, Seagal didn't value Van Damme as an actor or a bad guy. Van Damme didn't say anything in public. It took too much of his time to start blockbuster after blockbuster. Bloodsport, Kickboxer, Universal Soldier, and Time Cop. He had actually played in tournaments and was known for working all the time. He didn't just kick for fun. They were weapons. Insiders knew the stress was real, even though it was quiet. People who worked on the show and coordinated stunts would talk about how the two stars were never asked to the same events, and how producers had to pick one or the other so as not to cause trouble. There was an open war, but there was also no peace. The competition was pretty much known to everyone. Fans argued about it for hours. In a real fight, who would win? In real life, did Seagal's Aikido work? Could Van Damme's speed be faster than his skill? It was talked about on magazine covers, martial arts sites, and late-night talk shows. Everyone had something to say. Everyone chose a side. But the two men stayed away from each other and never spoke directly to each other. That was until one night. But that can wait. For now, it's important to know that this wasn't just a feud between two people. There was a clash of ideas here. Van Damme stood for the flashy, high-energy style of traditional martial arts and competition kickboxing. Seagal represented the grounded, mysterious air of Aikido, which was fluid, hard to pin down, and almost spiritual. Their roles on screen were a reflection of how they moved through Hollywood. Van Damme was sweet and emotional, and he often had his heart on his sleeve. Seagal was sad and far away, and always had something going on just below the surface. Even though there was stress, they were still connected. Seagal would come back with a new part every time Van Damme got a new hit. For every darker and more serious turn that Seagal's movies took, Van Damme made the stories even more emotional and open. It was like seeing two artists work on opposite sides of the same painting. They used different styles and brushstrokes, but they were always in contrast with each other. It wasn't just a Hollywood gossip by the end of the decade that they were having trouble getting along. The Cold War had been going on for years. It was a war of silence, looks, and most of all, pride. So, don't think these people were just movie stars behind all the interviews, roundhouse kicks, and serious speeches. They were good at martial arts. That's not how things are in their world. It's deserved. Soon, one of them would ask for it in the only way he knew how, the Stallone party thing. The feud stayed quiet for years, like a low-level tension under the surface of Hollywood's fast-paced action scenes. Then, there was the party, which was meant to be a relaxed, even happy get-together, the kind of event where stories and handshakes are freely shared and everyone goes with a tale to tell. Indeed, Sylvester Stallone is the host. In his later years, the man who had brought together many action stars in one place. People would remember this party as the night that almost blew up the whole world. It was the late 1990s, and the days of heroes with big muscles and clever one-liners were coming to an end. But at Stallone's house, everyone was in a good mood, and there were a lot of people there. Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and far more. Two men who had never seen a movie together hardly spoke to each other, and didn't show respect at all. Both Van Damme and Seagal are in the picture. Most people say that things started out nicely, with drinks, stories, and laughing. But then Seagal started to talk, as he always did. Not about his own movies or accomplishments, but about other people. According to Stallone, Seagal's comments went in a familiar direction by making fun of Van Damme's background, calling him overrated, and calling his skills as a martial artist into question. He might not have thought Van Damme would hear it. He might not have cared. Van Damme heard, though. The second time, he didn't want to keep quiet. What happened next is now a famous story in Hollywood. It was face-to-face between Van Damme and Seagal. There are no cameras or acting doubles. He didn't hit anyone. Instead, he put out a dare. Get outside and settle down like a real martial artist. Seagal brushed him off and tried to laugh it off, Stallone said. Van Damme didn't move. He told him again to back up what he said. Seagal said no. He quit the party for good. That's where this could have stopped. A nervous moment, yes, but nothing major. Van Damme wasn't done yet, though. In the late evening, he found Seagal at a nearby bar, where he had gone to get out of the heat. And again, in front of shocked onlookers, Van Damme dared him to a fight. Once more, Seagal said no. The event turned into a story very quickly. There were claims that it was faked and claims that it almost got physical. However, Stallone acknowledged it many years later, saying it was one of the tense fights he had ever seen at a party. His words were straightforward. Van Damme was too strong. Seagal did not want to be around him. Van Damme wasn't interested in putting on a show. It had to do with honor. If someone questioned your discipline, training, or authority, you stood up for it. Not with insults, but with facts. Because of him, martial arts wasn't just a set of moves. Seagal broke a rule that was a way of life. But Seagal's refusal didn't hurt him right away in Hollywood. He kept making movies and building up his mysterious image. But the story stuck with martial arts experts and people behind the scenes. Not only did Seagal leave, he did it twice when someone was ready to fight. When it came to Van Damme, he never talked about it. He didn't go on a news tour to talk about it. It wasn't turned into a movie by him. He didn't say anything. He let the silence talk for itself. But the harm was already done. It was too late to stop the Cold War from getting worse. That night made one thing clear, but it didn't settle the score. There was no news about this fight. It was about them, and Van Damme was only just beginning, even if no one knew it. The fight worth $20 million, 0 cents, that never took place. In public, the fight between Van Damme and Seagal had died down by the early 2000s, but it was still very much living behind closed doors. In Hollywood, the party event became a story that people should learn from. One of those stories that everyone said they heard from someone who was there. But neither man had ever gone on the record to make things right or settle the score. Not in the ring, on screen, or even in words. Then, just when it looked like the rivalry would be forgotten, something big came back to the top. Van Damme quietly dropped a bombshell in an interview with The Telegraph in 2023 that shocked everyone in the action movie business. He said in a calm, almost pleased voice that someone had once offered him $20 million, 0 cents, to fight Steven Seagal. It was a real fight in Las Vegas, not a scene from a movie. The idea was for two of the biggest names in martial arts to fight in front of a lot of people at the Mirage Casino. Not a trick double, 2 black belts and 1 ring. They wanted to get me and Steven into a fight at the Mirage. $20 million each. He didn't want to fight. The statement hit like a punch in the gut. It was direct and quiet, but it was hard to ignore. That this wasn't just a rumor or a fan-made story. The idea came from Peter Guber, a well-known and respected producer in the business. It was real money. The place was real. Van Damme said yes. Seagal never showed up, though. People in the news used the quote in their stories. Fans couldn't believe it when it was broken down on YouTube and in groups. Some people were shocked that the offer had been made at all. Some people couldn't believe Seagal said no. $20 million, 0 cents, a venue full of people, the fight of the decade, and he just left? Naturally, questions came up next. Why did Seagal not say yes? Was it fear? Was it pride? Or was there something more planned? and not wanting to risk the picture he had worked so hard to build over the years. After all, Seagal had always been more interested in being mysterious than in beating people in a ring. Van Damme had actually fought in tournaments, but Seagal's success started with demonstrations and not tournaments. His Aikido background is real, but it was never put to the test in fight like this. Also, there was the matter of pride. Seagal may have thought he was better than that kind of show. He may have thought the offer was beneath him, or he may have known that a real fight would settle more than just a competition. It would show things about both men's pasts that could not be changed. Van Damme didn't brag when he told the story. It was almost like he was finally tired of keeping a secret that no one believed because of the strange way he said it. There was no need for him to lie. There was no doubt about the numbers. More than anything else, Seagal's quiet said it all. But even though the story was told, there was no real resolution. Seagal didn't answer. There was no call for a rerun. There was never a late career fight. The chance passed, and like many tales, it slowly faded into what-ifs and guesses. That offer and that missed moment were more than just money for fans, though. It became a symbol of the whole Van Damme-Seagal story, which was a feud based on pride, filled with silence and shaped by a fight that never took place. What happened next would make that lack even more noticeable. Because Van Damme did something that no one saw coming, just as everyone thought the fight was ending, something that would make everything different, the trick of Instagram. It took place in silence. There was no trailer, red carpet, or news release. It was just one Instagram post from Jean-Claude Van Damme that made people look twice in just a few hours. He was sitting next to Steven Seagal at the same table having dinner and smiling. In fact, that is Steven Seagal. It looked like a friendly toast in the text. "Thanks for the great dinner, Steven, and your family. Have a wonderful birthday. Big news will be coming soon." And the internet blew up all at once. Action movie fans went crazy when they saw these two sitting down together after decades of cold silence, mysterious jabs, and close calls. Was it a sign of getting along again? A long-awaited peace deal? Or the start of something even bigger? The comment sections were full of ideas. Some fans were very happy. At last, the legends came together. Some people were confused. Van Damme was the one who asked him to fight outside of Stallone's house, right? But there were also diehards who looked at the movie frame by frame for clues. Did Van Damme really smile? Did Seagal look tense? Was that toast real, or was it just for the camera? The media picked up on it. One title said, "Finally, peace! Van Damme and Seagal get back together after many years," said someone else. People who are famous often end their fights with tweets of regret and work together on projects. This looked like the happy finish that no one dared hope for. But there was something wrong, something not quite right. The video was short and carefully cropped. There was no sound or behind-the-scenes footage. There was just a slow pan across the table with Van Damme nodding and Seagal looking blankly at the camera in the background. The last line in the description said, "Big news coming soon." That's what people remembered. Just what kind of news? A movie? An official story? A show of martial arts? Was this just smart marketing? Or was there something going on behind the scenes? Van Damme didn't say anything else, and Seagal, as usual, didn't say anything. The silence made things even stranger, and the time seemed off. The dinner wasn't just any old thing, and this was a very private moment that became very public very quickly. It was Seagal's birthday. Why now? Why do you post it? Why hint at working together after avoiding each other, making fun of each other, and not really recognizing each other for so many years? Some fans thought it was real. Some people weren't sure. Why didn't Van Damme say more if he had really put the fight behind him? Why didn't Seagal do it? Why not show them smiling, shaking hands, and hugging like Stallone and Schwarzenegger did in the end? Why is there a limit? Why the perfectly planned lack of clarity? Ideas spread quickly. It's possible that all the excitement was for a movie that had been quietly being made. It's possible that they were finally making money off of the feud that had followed them around their whole lives. Or, just maybe there was more to the story than we knew. There is something darker and deeper. Most people took the post at face value, but friends of both men for a long time saw something strange in Van Damme's face. He had a flicker in his eyes, not anger, not happiness, but something else. He hadn't said much, but the time, the silence, and the way he chose to say things made it clear. It wasn't just a get-together. It was all set up for a bigger and different thing. He also hinted that the big news was on the way, but no one was ready for it. Jean-Claude Van Damme breaks the silence. There were no fireworks or other big events when Jean-Claude Van Damme finally broke his quiet. There was no shocking film or confrontation. There was only one interview that was calm, somber, and heartbreaking. His public image had been carefully managed for years, and rumors had been going around. Then he said one line that changed everything. "He's not telling the truth. Who's there?" There was no doubt or going back on what they said. They were completely honest in a way that didn't sound angry, but just tired of the idea. He was sick of the silence, and the man he thought had been hidden for decades behind smoke and mirrors. This was no longer about Van Damme's ego, it was about setting the record straight. His speech was clear, as if he hadn't let anything slip for years, but now he wasn't going to let anything slip anymore. He said Steven Seagal had lied about being something he wasn't for most of his career, not just an action star but also a martial arts superstar without any proof. Van Damme didn't hold back. He says he's trained CIA agents and faced bad guys in real life, but he's never been in a real tournament. "No one has ever stepped into a ring like I did." The comment hit hard, not just because of what he said, but also because of who said it. Van Damme wasn't just another reviewer or person who fought on the internet. He was a person who had done their time, that had practiced for years and put his body on the line in fights. He knew that what he said meant a lot. He didn't end there. He brought up the $20 million fight deal again, but this time he explained more. "They gave us both the same deal. A lot of money, a real crowd, and Las Vegas. I told him no. He didn't." It was clear what it meant. He had a chance, a public stage, a moment to make things right. He then left. Then Van Damme went back to the Instagram post that had fans so excited just a few weeks before. There was more to the dinner than met the eye. That meal? It wasn't a friendship. It was just observation. There was nothing different when I looked again. He said that after all this time, he had hoped Seagal had changed, grown up, and let go of the role. What he saw, though, only proved what he already thought. The swagger, tall tales, and acting were still there, but what was the real reason behind it? Van Damme says it's hollow. That big news he made hints about in the post? That was it. Not a show or a group effort, just the truth. It turned out that the truth was worse than anyone thought. For years, fans had argued about who would win a fight, who had the best kicks, and which movies were the most famous, but the real story was never about a fight. It had to do with respect, and what Van Damme finally said wasn't just an attack. What they did was take apart, like pulling back the curtain to see how a career built more on mystery than achievement worked. Someone broke the silence. The fight was no longer based on rumors or secondhand stories that were now out in the open. It was clear, it was private, and it would not go away. Steven Seagal's silence is finally broken by Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's even worse than you'd think. Not because he yelled or fought, but because he said what he meant. But the truth can sometimes hurt more than any punch. Fallout and legacy were changed. As soon as it was said, "He is a fake," they could not be stopped. Van Damme finally spoke out about something that many people had been whispering about for years, and the response was quick. Fans, reviewers, martial artists, and people who used to work with them all had something to say. Almost no one stayed neutral. Some were shocked, some felt justified, but most were both. The competition that had been kept quiet was now being talked about in public. The question was, where do the legends go from here? Steven Seagal didn't answer, not in a formal way, not in an interview, and not even in an unclear way on social media. As he always did when there was trouble, he kept quiet. The quiet didn't feel mysterious this time, though. It felt like there was something missing, a void, a chance lost to protect or deny. Van Damme's supporters tried to make sense of what he said by saying he was just angry or that it was all for attention. That answer didn't work, though. Van Damme didn't sound like he was trying to get attention, so his words came across as those who had had enough. The talk online changed all of a sudden. People watched old conversations with Seagal again and picked them apart. Those crazy stories he used to tell about fighting gangsters, teaching top agents, and breaking arms behind closed doors seemed more like made-up stories than true stories. At the same time, videos of Van Damme playing in real events came back online. Video of him practicing, fighting, getting hurt, and winning. The difference could no longer be avoided. People who do martial arts started to join in. Some people politely agreed with Van Damme. Others were more direct, saying that Seagal had a reputation for a long time that he hadn't earned in real battle. What people used to keep quiet about out of fear, respect, or politics was now being talked about in public. The conversation got louder as Seagal stayed quiet longer, but it had an effect on more than just image. Fans who had looked up to both guys as kids had to change their minds. There was no longer any need to choose sides. It had to do with the truth. What did it mean to be a martial artist? Was it about public image or hard work? About show or practice? And could someone still be a hero if, as Van Damme put it, the basis of their legend was a carefully built lie? Van Damme's life was strangely quiet afterward. There were no follow-up interviews or news tours. He didn't change what he said. That could have been the point. He had finally faced the issue after avoiding it for decades. In taking them on, he didn't just settle a personal score. He changed the story. It had all been building up to this, the years of quiet, the Instagram post, and the hopeful rumors. Still, not everyone was against Seagal. Some fans stayed very committed, saying that his impact on martial arts movies couldn't be ignored. In some ways, that's true. His early movies made Aikido more well-known and showed a new way to fight on film. But your reputation isn't just based on what you say, it's also based on what you do. There is no cage match or movie where the story of Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal ends. Instead, there is an undeniable contrast between two men who walked the same stage but lived very different lives. One built his job on being known for being disciplined, fighting, and being emotionally open. The other one was based on secret, power, and myth. Of course, when the quiet finally broke, it wasn't punches or kicks that hurt the most. Being honest. This was the first time in more than 30 years that the feud came to an end. It didn't end in peace or fighting, but in revelation. And for people who watched both guys as kids, that ending may not have been what they wanted, but it was just what they needed. Van Damme finally answered the question that many people had been wondering for decades. But it wasn't easy or quick. Now it's your turn to ask. Did Steven Seagal ever really exist? Or was that just the best show of his career?